Mr. Harris, Dr. Harris.
Thank you very much. And you know, before I start, I do want to thank FEMA for the obviously the extensive help they have in my district, the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Which you know, you're from Florida, driving through the lower shore of Maryland looks like you're driving through the lower part of Florida, and that's brings up one of the questions I have, which is this new federal flood risk management standard that was promulgated by executive order in January. It's a little troubling because the you know, our bill last year specifically said that none of the funds available in this act or any other act should be used to implement you know, a federal flood risk management standard until the administration has solicited and considered inputs from governors, mayors, and other stakeholders. Now, on and that, as you know, that was passed late in the year, and on January 30th, the executive order was issued saying the views of governors, mayors, and other stakeholders were solicited and considered as efforts were made to establish a new federal flood, the flood risk reduction standard. Were you involved in that, in the development of that standard for the executive order?
Yes, from the standpoint of the mitigation senior leadership group that's part of the National Response Framework.
And what were the mechanisms by which you solicited? Because I'm still trying to find a mayor in my district that was whose input was solicited, and believe me, they have a vested interest in what that what the FFRMS looks like, because so much of my district has now had an expanded definition because of the BFE +2 or +3 definition. So how was that input solicited?
I would not be able to tell you, sir, because I was involved. My staff was basically involved in what the standard would be, not the outreach at that point. We've been heavily involved since the executive order doing outreach.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. From the time the bill was passed until January 30th, was your staff paid to develop the FMRMS despite Congress's pretty clear language that says no funds shall be spent without soliciting input? So did your staff develop this without soliciting input?
I understand it's a simple question. Our staff were working on the standard itself. There were other agencies involved. We've been charged by the administration to go out before this rule is finally implemented and do outreach, which we have been doing across the nation.
However, the executive order actually sets up a timeline for implementation, so one could interpret the executive order itself as implementation of the FFRMS, because it specifically says FEMA, for instance, before implementation is supposed to go and do the solicitation. So it sets up kind of a circular argument. I mean, the executive order itself sets up implementation. One could view that as implementation of the new FFRMS. So this is simple because, you know, the Anti-Deficiency Act is pretty clear. When Congress says no funds shall be used, it really means no funds shall be used. And this administration has kind of a record on this. You know, you're just one in a series of people to come before this committee to address an issue of whether the administration is adhering to the will of Congress spelled out clearly in an appropriations bill. So I'm just going to ask it one more time. To your knowledge, did anyone in FEMA spend money? And I'll take it a little bit further, because right now...
Sir, yeah, the answer is yes. We were committing staff time at the direction of the administration to work on this as part of our assigned duties.
Are your employees aware that this applies to everyone, not just the Anti-Deficiency Act applies to every employee of the federal government, not just leadership? You know, an excuse can't be, well, my boss told me to, if you know about this, because my understanding is that Section 404 is covered, Section 203 is covered, the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program is covered, would be covered by changes to the FFRMS. So I'm going to ask you an additional question. Are any of your employees in those sections, who handle those sections, at this point in time, spending any money to implement the new standard? That is, any planning, writing any projected plans of what the effect would be on these programs, because this is the essence of what we do in an appropriation limitation rider, is to say you can't spend a dime. Are your employees in those programs, Section 404, 203, and the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, because that's what CRS has said, those are the FEMA programs that would come under this new mitigation rule, are they spending money in any way, shape, or form to develop a response to this new executive order?
Specifically, I cannot say yes or no. I'd have to go back to research that. I can tell you we are using our funds to do the outreach and listening sessions across the country. As far as what staff had taken steps on any implementation, I would have to respectfully get back to you on that by those programs that you've listed.
Well, I would appreciate that, that you get back to me, because again, Section 749 in H.R. 83 is very, very clear. It says no funds. So please get back to me if, in fact, FEMA is, coming before this committee to ask for funds for next year and actually disregarding the intent of the Appropriations Committee in this year's appropriations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.